Hey everyone, thank you for joining. Starting with today's Jumpstart Your Health Week. Today we're talking about eating to live your best life. So we are excited about this week. We hope that you were able to tune in at least to some parts of yesterday with hip hop and health. And today we're talking about food and nutrition. We're continuing that conversation, and we are excited to get started with both Natalie Core and Leslie Jefferson. So I'm going to bring them back. I'm going to bring them on the stage now. Thank you. So I see Leslie here. We're trying to connect with her, and then I'm waiting for Natalie. Hey y'all, hey y'all. Thank y'all for coming through. Thank y'all for showing up too last night. Thank y'all for sharing. Y'all have shared these posts. We appreciate you all. Hi, how are you doing?
I'm fabulous. How are you?
Thanks so much for joining. I see Natalie in the room now, so I'm going to bring her on as well.
Hi.
Hey, Natalie. Thanks so much for joining. Yay. We're all on.
Hi, Leslie. We made it.
We made it. I am
We
so
did.
excited to see your lovely faces and energy here today. You two were, some of the first people I thought about when we talk about food and nutrition. And Taryn mentioned Leslie's and connected us, so thank you so much. But Natalie has a beautiful story that I think too aligns with this work. So I just want to, let's start with, let me tell y'all, everybody, a little bit about Starting With Today, just in case it's the first time with Starting With Today's nonprofit based in the Washington, D.C. area, Prince George's County specifically. And we promote Black healing and Black liberation. And we do that through several programs around mental health, economic empowerment, career services, and well-being. Since 2018, we had this conversational style conversation with the Shape Up, where we brought a Black licensed therapist to the Black barbershop. And since that has evolved to its own thing, we've also had the My Hair appointment, where we begin to talk about more about the integration between well-being and health and how we can elevate that and define that in our community. So this is a continuation of those conversations. And really just over the last year, we began to really see how the pandemic has affected our communities disproportionately. We've already been screaming this and shouting this from the rooftop, but last year was such an enormous cost of the health, the inequities that we've been facing in our community. So we wanted to do something as we're beginning to open up outside, that we are not going about business as usual, right? So that we're using this time to really take inventory of what things have worked for us and what things we want to do better for ourselves, for our community at large, and then also for future generations. So that is the purpose of this Jumpstart Your Health Week. And so we're excited to get started. Miss Leslie Jefferson, do you mind giving people an introduction about you, your work with Giant food stores in the community in general around nutrition?
Yeah, sure. If you did not know, Giant has nutritionists, and we're here to help. We provide community support as well on one-on-one consultations. It's free.
I didn't know one-on-one consultation.
One-on-one.
What?
It's all about you, right? You can take a moment just for you.
I love that.
How many times do we get a moment just for ourselves?
I know, that's really good. I've already learned something.
I know, I was going to say, who knew?
And it's totally free. You don't need insurance. You just
Wow.
book the time with the nutritionist, and we meet, and you get a whole hour, and it's unlimited. So it's not like you can only do it once or twice. And then we also have free classes. So tons of classes, which is what I was doing right before this.
Yeah.
Eating for diabetes, pre-diabetes, which we know our community we got to get that under control.
Absolutely.
But, eating for pre-diabetes, diabetes, heart health classes, even meal planning classes, meal prep classes, totally free and totally available. 6 weeks to wellness. So I do that a couple times a year, which is a 6-week program where we go from soup to nuts. What's on your plate? Are you moving? I bring in a physical trainer. We have mental health.
What?
We do a little bit. Yeah.
You got a customer. You got
Wow.
a new person signing up, right? You done already somebody for tonight. You
It's all, and it's free. I mean, this is
no
a free
idea.
service. So, we're happy. That's why we're here. We're here for the community. Right now, everything's all online, but we go out into the community. We've just been released to go back out into the community and work, one-on-one with folks and for community events. So, we offer a ton of value, especially in the nutrition space.
I love that. That is so good. I knew you had the health books. I would see those when I was shopping at Giant. When I shop in Giant, that's the closest grocery store to me. And so I would pick those up and I would, look for inspiration ideas. They were very helpful and visually appealing. So it always caught my eye. I did know y'all had nutritionists. I didn't know to what extent they were available to the community. And I didn't know y'all had all these classes and all that other stuff available. So yeah, we got to get that word out.
And definitely, and even if you can't get to one of the Savory magazines in the store, it's available online. So you can even, it's such a robust database of recipes. So let's say you don't like chicken or tomatoes. So you can say, give me all the recipes that don't have chicken or tomatoes. That's and really it'll filter it out for you.
Nice.
It'll even filter it out on nutritional value. So it'll filter it out for heart health. It'll filter it out for diabetes or vegan or vegetarian. So it's giantfood.com. Click on recipes and inspiration, and you can have a lot of fun with that.
I love that. I love that. That's so informative. So thank you so much for joining us, and we're looking forward to this conversation. And now I want to talk a little bit about Natalie. Natalie is a former Starting With Today participant in our community who came and we did some one-on-one trainings. And we was talking about actually like careers and finance. And then like 6 months later, I saw Natalie and she was like, fine. I was like, what happened? She's like, I changed my diet. I was like, what? You look amazing. So can you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself, Natalie?
Well, thank you, Charlotte. You're very flattering. So my journey with food and my relationship with food, it's been an interesting one, and one where thankfully, like, I'm on the up, now. But it was rough. I was raised, I think, like a lot of Black people, a lot of us in our community, where we just ate unconsciously. You picked up what you can afford, what you like, what tastes good, what's familiar. You go to the stores that are nearby, right? You're not venturing off to find other supermarkets that might have, some new variety. You just stick to what you know. People are working, they're going to school, they're just struggling to kind of get by, and they're not conscious of the kinds of food choices that they make. And so I came from one of those families where, they had good intentions, but a combination of, challenges made it so that food was just, healthy eating was not a priority. As long as you eat something, put something in your stomach. My mother is famous for saying that. Did you get something in your stomach? And that kind of sums it up. Something. Put something in there.
Definitely relatable for sure.
I think we all can relate to that, right? And like they meant well. They were trying to take care of you. And a lot of times I think the food becomes kind of a panacea, right? Like, just make sure you eat something and like the rest of the stuff will get taken care of, And so food became a really like a crutch for me, and putting food in to meet a lot of needs, other needs, outside of hunger, I didn't even really learn to identify hunger until I was an adult because I was always eating. I was always snacking. I was always putting something in my stomach. And so, you know, when you're constantly giving yourself food, it's hard to recognize hunger. And it's also hard to recognize some of the other needs, like your need to move. You know, you might be restless and need to get out and do something. But if you don't know that, you open the refrigerator door 15 times, you know. You might be bored, you know, and need some intellectual stimulation. But if you don't recognize that need, you know, you go to the kitchen, the cupboard, you know, and get some cookies. You might be tired, you know, and you really need to take a nap. You really need to rest, but you eat something to, like, you know, make you feel better, keep you awake. You may be in a situation where you can't take a nap right now, and you have that food to kind of give you the extra energy. And so, I mean, you see where I'm going with
Yeah,
the, you know,
absolutely. And even I feel this past week, I have been, and I had to have a switch, right? Like I was definitely stress eating, so I had to stop everything and like go get fruits and nuts and stuff because I'm still gonna stress eat. I understand like this is a stressful week. I'm conscious of it, but like let me switch out what I'm putting into my body right now, what I'm grabbing.
Exactly.
But this is something I've only learned, you know, over the last 5, maybe 10 years, becoming more aware of it, but 5 beginning to really try to shift behavior that, you know, I've grown up with my whole life. Yeah.
Absolutely. It's just normalizing. And you're right. Like once you start to become aware, that's the beginning of you really making different choices. Right. So like I'm having a stressful week. What else can I substitute? You know, before something I learned in my journey is before I take anything away, I need to put something in its place. I need to focus on giving myself something healthy as opposed to just cutting out food.
That's a great perspective.
So I grew up in a house where we had ice cream, you know, cupcakes, donuts, cookies in the house always as a standard on top of the refrigerator, on top of their microwave. And I was so used to having that we all grew up in the same house. And I was so used to having a dessert, right? And I didn't realize it that like it was par for the course. You have something savory or salty, you go get something sweet after, right? Super unconscious. And you know, when I started to put on all of the weight and start to feel really cumbersome, you know, it's heavy carrying around all that weight and tired, you know, I was like, well, what can I do to substitute? I really know I want something sweet because I'm in the habit of having something sweet after dinner. So maybe instead of ice cream, I transitioned to yogurt, right? I would have my yogurt with the fruit, right? And that became like a way of kind of like slowly like pushing the ice cream out, but still giving myself something healthier. And then I transitioned from the yogurt with the fruit to just fruit.
I love that.
Right?
And that's a great point. So I want to talk a little bit about how you really give us a great segue about how food is ingrained into our culture, right? And so, Leslie, can you talk a little bit about? I know I'm from the South. And Natalie's from New York, I believe, and so we've still had similar experiences with food. I
have a grandmother from the South.
I was home this past month, and it's the same thing, right? And I've transitioned my diet, but what's in the house is very different than what I need to eat and fuel myself. But there's so many cultural differences where if there's a Southern thing where if you're not eating, you know, eating what's being provided for you, it's rude, it's, you know, it's taken personally. So Leslie, can you talk a little bit about food and culture, where we have been, you know, historically with food and the conversations that you have with trying to shape a different narrative?
Yeah, so food and culture is very important. We cannot, you know, just not have culture because, you know, we need to keep as much culture as we get. Right? So, absolutely. Yeah, and our culture historically has been, with food, has been one of, you know, lack. We have not had an abundance of food. It's just recently that, you know, as a culture, as a people, we've had an abundance of food.
Wow.
So if you think about historically what we were given during times of slavery, we were given the, you know, the leftover.
Right.
And, you know, ham hocks sustained a lot of people because
Yeah.
it was the leftover,
Yeah.
right? And then historically, people carried that, you know, into their diets. That's what they knew. That's what they knew how to cook. That's, you know, they carried those recipes along with them.
Yeah.
I mean, we brought over things like yams and okra from the motherland. So we brought those foods with us so that we could, you know, have things that were familiar and we knew how to eat and knew how to prepare.
Right.
So there's a historical reference to food, but there is also now we are in a place, even though I know that there are pockets and things of food insecurity, we have all of that happening now and it's terrible. But you could go down any street and every supermarket is now a food court. You know, every strip mall is now a food court.
Yeah.
So you can get so much food, and the price of some of the food is perceived as a lot more inexpensive because you can get $1 meal somewhere really quick.
Right.
And you don't have to cook. We all now have personal chefs. McDonald's and Taco Bell have become our personal chefs. So it's something to think about, the abundance of choice that we have. And how you choose to spend your dollars that you do have on food. And then I love your conversation about mindfulness, you know, just being mindful. And what does your plate look like? Why are you eating? Are you hungry? Are you bored? You know, what's going on? What is your level of hunger? Being able to assess that is a very powerful statement, because thinking about why you're eating is just as important as what you're eating. And we have a whole class on mindfulness, lots of exercises talking about habits, creating new habits. What are your triggers? What are your cues? How are you managing those habits and cues? Are you, you know, every time you sit down, it's a habit to watch TV. It's a habit to have the popcorn next to you to do that.
Yeah.
You know, is the cue that it's time to relax? So now you have popcorn and that makes you feel as though you're relaxing. You know, what are your cues? What are the triggers? And what are the habits that you're forming? And how can you tweak those so that they lend more toward the health goals you want to achieve?
I love that. I love that. So let's talk a little bit about, you know, what's the first step of a health goal? And Natalie, can you talk a little bit about, I know I have been in this space where, you know, I used to only work out for summer, you know, the summer workout queen. I'll get in shape for summer and I'm gaining all that from September to May, if not more, right? And so as I got older, it was harder to shed that weight that quickly, right? And so I got to a point where I was tired of feeling tired. I know that was I was constantly lethargic. I was constantly feeling like I was carrying more than my body wanted to carry. And so that began to point where I kind of begin to kind of shift behaviors. Natalie, can you talk a little bit about how you began to shift? What was your point where you said, you know, this is enough for me?
Yeah, so I had probably two major things that created a shift. One, I was about 15 or 16, 220 pounds. I was wearing a size 20. And I started to have heart palpitations, and I could hardly get around because I was just carrying too much weight. And I was eating fast food every day at that point. She was cooking, you know, even if you don't like to cook, which I don't, I learned to cook very simply and quickly because I understood that the fast food that I was eating every day led to that like extreme and compulsive eating, to tell you the truth, because I also had an eating disorder, which wasn't really called that. We don't tend to use that language in our communities,
Yeah.
disordered eating. It's just kind of normalized to go back and get seconds and thirds, and
It is
nobody's
very
really
normalized.
counting. It's a compliment, like you said. It's an insult if you don't eat their food, and it's a compliment if you go back for 2 and 3, right?
Right.
And and so nobody sees that, and it doesn't like send up a red flag to anyone that maybe something else is going on here. So I was definitely binge eating and compulsively eating and eating fast food every day. And so I got really sick. It came to a head when I got really sick, and I actually got food poisoning from eating some fat. I don't even know which one it was because I ate fast food every day at that point in my life. So I don't know which particular thing it was that made me sick. But I got really sick, and I was on antibiotics for a long time. And over those 2 or 3 months that I wasn't able to eat normal food, I was on a very bland diet to just kind of detox and something to hold the medication that I was taking. That was a major shift for me, because that was when I started looking at ingredients. What's in the food I'm eating? Prior to that, when you're eating fast food, you have no idea. There's a little white styrofoam container. You have no idea what's in it. And after being sick for 2 or 3 months, I made it a point to start going to the grocery store at 15 or 16, just so I could buy the things and read the label and see what was in it. And so the education piece,
I'm sorry.
The educational piece, learning what was in food, that was a part of that shift. And then the shift as far as like the physical activity, because that was just the diet portion of it, right? That started when I was a teenager, really out of a crisis. I had to make different choices. And I think I was lucky, because a lot of times we experience these health crises when we're like in our 40s and 50s, after we've been practicing these habits for decades. Fortunately or unfortunately, however you want to look at it, I had that crisis as a teenager. And so I was able to arrest that process of just kind of blindly eating fast food and getting bigger and bigger and bigger, realizing, Natalie, like, your health is fragile. And, at any point that can be interrupted, right? So like the second shift, though, to answer your question, happened with, physical activity when I was about 22. And I remember that because that's when I left home. And in my home, no one exercised. I mean, we had an exercise bike that we used to hang things on. It was like a clothes rack. It had dust on it. And it wasn't until I individuated, left home, and I was watching a program on the news that said, if you just exercise 3 days a week for a half hour, that can change the trajectory of your health. And I thought, 3 days a week for a half hour, like, I can do that somewhere. I'm not a morning person. I knew I didn't want to get up early to work out. At the end of the day, I was tired when I came home from work, so that was out. So I decided to take advantage of my lunch break. And I happened to work in an office park that had a trail. And so I started walking 3 days a week for a half hour. And I would take my lunch and eat it afterwards, after I walked. But that was the beginning just of a really easy habit to start, right? And it was one of the best things I ever did for myself, starting off small.
I love that. Thanks so much for sharing that. I know that is a principle that you've applied, in so many aspects of your life, and definitely part of, what we believe in. And the doctor yesterday, Dr. Newsom, was saying, if he can give one tip of advice, even smaller, right? So once a week for 15 minutes, just walk to get your body moving and then build from there. Leslie, can we talk a bit about, we talked a little bit about mindfulness, but I had a conversation, I was telling you all, I had a conversation with a friend, Mike, and the beginning of this year, I think I went home for Dallas, and I had really derailed all the progress I had made with lots of cakes for the holidays. And so I was like, I need to process why I am going back to this comfort food. And he gave me a tip where, maybe there's an opportunity that we can redefine comfort food, in that there is also pleasure in taking care of ourselves. There's also comfort in preparing our bodies for our future. And that begins to do a shift for me. So can you talk a little bit about, we talk about what we're replacing food with, but can we talk a little bit about the goals, health goals, and mindfulness, and how we can redefine what we feel is comfort?
Yeah, comfort food is, there's nothing wrong with having certain foods. I mean, I like to say there are no good or bad foods. You just need to know what applies to the goal you're trying to achieve. We're all adults, right? Or not. Maybe we're younger at 15, 16, right? But
right.
I mean, the impact of food on your body. So some people have different goals, and some people have different reasons why we eat. So then there is disordered eating, having people that help you to recognize when that is occurring. You need additional help and support for those things. But that aside, if I want to lose weight, right? I want to lose weight. So I'm going to have a cupcake. How does that cupcake impact your body? We talked earlier about being aware of what food does for the body, what's in certain food. There's ingredients. There are these small steps you can take. But if you have a cupcake, okay, give yourself some grace, right? It's not.
Give myself some grace.
It's not the end of the world, right? We're not talking about the disordered eating scale, right? We're not talking about there, but you're just, person, you have a cupcake, you're out with friends. Give yourself some grace, because now you want to get yourself back on track, right?
Yeah.
You always have that statement, in moderation. I'm not really a fan of that word. I am a fan of know what you're trying to achieve for your body and make the choices that go along with those goals. It's so important because you are able to make the choice. Even if the cupcake is available, you may have some people that may say, you know what? I have some goals in mind. The cupcake does not fit. The cupcake doesn't fit. Not today. Right?
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
Right? It doesn't fit. So you have to be able to make those choices. I know they're hard choices because the cupcake just calls to you. I get it. Same thing with the glass of wine at night, right? Some people may have a glass of wine at night. Bringing down those portion sizes, sharing the cupcake, right? There are different things you can do so you can still have some enjoyment. But overall, in this life, you have to be able to make those strong choices so that you can achieve your goals. It sounds easier than it is, but it's the same as I'm going to decide, I'm going to choose to walk 30 minutes a day, and that's where I'm going to start. I'm going to choose to do these here first, right? It's all mental, and then it flows as you make those choices and decisions. So each person is different. Every one of us has different goals that we're trying to achieve. So we want to make sure that we're taking in behaviors that help us. And one good book you can read about habit, because really what we're talking about is creating new habits. And I really enjoyed James Clear, Atomic Habits.
Okay.
It's an excellent book, and it talks about the theory of habit stacking.
Okay.
So as we decided at lunch, right? I'm going to insert a new behavior. I'm going to go for a 30-minute walk. So when you're doing things that you can insert habits into places where you're already doing things. So simple things for me, right? Challenge, not food related, but
that's okay.
I was terrible at making up my bed. Terrible. But it was something I wanted to achieve. I love audiobooks. So before I could listen to my audiobook in the morning, I had to make up my bed. So I inserted a new behavior before an old behavior.
I love that.
And then after I made up my bed, I quickly turned on my audiobook. I felt fulfilled. I felt satisfied. And you can do the same with any habit. Insert it somewhere where you're already doing things. I like to walk my dog. Okay. Before I walk my dog, I'm going to put on my tennis shoes. Right?
Right.
So I walk a little longer with him.
Yeah.
Or her. With her.
Mhm.
So that can start you on a path to more movement and exercise. When I make my meals, I'm going to ensure, because we are going to make a meal, I'm going to ensure that there's a vegetable on my plate.
Can you speak
Right.
a little bit? You mentioned a little bit about portion size. Can you talk a little bit about, you know, I remember seeing the plate maybe when we were kids, but I think we all need refreshers sometimes. I know I do. To say what does the portion size look like, and what should be on our plates?
Well, it's funny. I just came out of the class and we go over the food label, and I really, think that the food label is such an important part. Most people, the biggest question I'm asked every day is, what can I eat that's healthy? How do I know that's healthy? Like, well, different things are healthy for different people based on your goals. So with that in mind, the first thing is to look at the serving size on the label. I take cereal as an example. Most people never measure their cereal, right? You have some people, but most people don't. They grab cereal, they pour it in a bowl. Maybe they look at the big, huge number that says how many calories is in the cereal, but they never take into consideration the serving size that applies to. So 3/4 of a cup of cereal might be 230 calories. You're like, yay, 230 calories, I can have that, but you got 3 cups of cereal on your bowl.
Exactly.
So with that, it's all about, that's your portion. Cups is your portion, but your serving size is only 3/4 of a cup on the food label.
Yeah.
So your portion versus the serving size is very important to consider. Old school way to look at portions, very old school, is to use your hand. Very old school. Palm of your hand is your portion for protein. Fist is your grains.
Okay.
And like the size of a potato that you might eat.
Okay.
And if you put your hands together, that is your portion of vegetables. Like a cup, put your hands together. Okay. That's your portion of vegetables.
So meat.
Yep, beans.
Grain.
Grain. Yep. And then put your hands together for your vegetables.
Got it.
So that's each one of us. My hand is made for me, your hand is made for you.
Yeah.
So it's a good visual representation when you have a plate of pasta and that pasta is like all over the plate.
The whole plate.
And you got 3 pasta in your primavera. So I encourage you to always have your plate vegetables. Breakfast, lunch, dinner, and even snacks. Get those vegetables in, especially when we get over a certain age.
I love it. And I think I definitely begin to see the shift over 35 for me. I think I got a little bit more intentional about my health goals. I think for me, one of the things I thought about that begins to shift is how I want to feel. You know what I'm saying? Like, just not just how I want to look, but how do I want to feel? What kind of energy I want to have? How do I want to show up in my spaces? I believe was very important to me. And show up for myself. And I didn't want to, take for granted mobility and strength and all those things anymore. I lost my notes because I started looking up the Atomic Habits. So let me get back to the right page. I didn't want to forget. I'm gonna put that on the list.
I wrote it down too.
And I love audiobooks as well. I love it.
Yeah.
So I want to talk a little bit about food and disease prevention and management. We see a lot of information now that we have internet and Instagram and people, everybody's a specialist. So I'm really, really, really glad that we have a licensed nutritionist who has done the study to really give us some sound information. But I really thought about Natalie here too, because we used to live in the same apartment complex some years back, and Natalie I didn't know she didn't like to cook because she cooked for me and it was delicious. So that was the first thing. But Natalie also was talking about I was having some skin sensitivities, and she was like, well, did you look at the label? And like, these are some products that, you know, can remove chemicals from your body, your intake. And so that it's something that seems very obvious to some people. Something I definitely have to learn from different people. And for me, it began to, once I changed my products, it began to clear my eczema. It began to clear up just a lot of other stuff. I was having a lot of allergic reactions. And if I'm not, I still see some sensitivities, but it's grossly reduced. So I really started thinking about food and intake and how it begins to affect things that I thought it was just how I was, versus my body is actually allergic to this. I'm having an allergic reaction to food. So can you talk a little bit about, food disease prevention, but also disease management? I know you said you had a class earlier today on diabetes.
So, food and health are very individualized. I call it, it's called personalized nutrition. Because, just as I was in that diabetes class today, I could have a person with diabetes, one eat a sweet potato and their blood sugar goes through the roof. The other person, maybe not. I mean, because we're all different. We're all different. So I love your reference to I call it Dr. Google. Dr. Google, everybody looks up Dr. Google. And what's the latest and the greatest thing, and there's no magic item out there. There was, I'm rich, but there is no magic out there, because you have to do what's best for you and your body. Your body is very wise. And where I went to school, that was one of the saying. Your body is wise, and listen to it. It lets you know when something is going wrong. And if you choose to continue with that particular item, you know the impact that if you do have ice cream and you're lactose intolerant, you know it's going to happen. Again, there's that word, choice, right?
Choice. You're choosing the toilet that night. You make that decision.
It's your choice. Give yourself some grace. Get ready. Take your Atomic Habits book and go on in and get ready. So, there's that. But our body is very wise. And what a lot of our foods now, there's a lot of information out there about food, but our food sometimes does lack some of the nutrition of days gone by. Our soils can be depleted, so we don't get enough minerals from, the foods that we're eating. But the key is to make sure that we are eating, the magic comes in having those good carbs. We want carbs, and carbs get so maligned, and so do fats. Fats get very maligned. But we want the good fats. So we want those omega-3s, things that our bodies can't make on our own, but we have to get through food that comes from fatty fish, that comes from our nuts and our seeds. It comes from a lot of good quality vegetable-based oils. So we want those in our diets, but we don't want them in our diets because we have fried food, right? Yeah. Be mindful of that as well. And then on the carbohydrate side, most people don't understand, how through the day these things add up. So you get up in the morning, you have that, cereal with maybe a little bit of juice, or you made this gigantic smoothie that's full of healthy things. And then your carbohydrate load in that morning meal is just off the charts. Then you hit, Subway, or you hit, you have a fast food meal, and another carbohydrate. sodium meal. Then you go to another dinner, and maybe you might have nice lean protein and a salad. So through the day, we have to be mindful of all of the things that we take in, because that's where inflammation starts. And we see it happening over time. It doesn't happen right away. It's not that reaction. Some foods give us that reaction. But over time, we see that chronic disease. I had a lady once tell me, every 10 years, I get a new birthday present. It's hypertension one year, high cholesterol the next year. Now I'm it, because it happens over time. So we do have the opportunity to stop it. And that's with high fiber foods, like our fruits, our vegetables, our whole grains, and getting them in with every meal. Every time you eat, you should have a vegetable on your plate. It doesn't necessarily mean that everything is plant-based or you got to be vegan. Those are your choices, personal choices. But just put a vegetable on your plate.
It's just a vegetable. And that's we had a Dr. Ogechi yesterday who talked about that. She's like, if you can just please throw in a vegetable. If you're having an egg, put some spinach on there, put some tomatoes on there, something like add it to every meal. I think was her, her takeaway. One of the things you mentioned though was about, over time that these diseases and these health ailments come up. Natalie, I think one of the things that a lot of people get frustrated with is that they will have these habits that they've developed over 20 or 30 years, and they want the results of a healthy diet to switch everything overnight, right? Or a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks or a month. And they want to see a complete shift and undoing. Can you talk a little bit about how you went about this steady, consistent change that you've been able to maintain for, a very long time, like the having the end goal in mind, or, the continuation goal. Maybe it's not the end goal, it's continuation.
Yeah, very good point. So process versus the reward at the end. So I there was a shift in my thinking from having a goal, a weight loss goal, to wanting to enjoy the process. Every single day, I want to do things that make me feel good, not just some, finish line. Because what happens then? Like when you get a lot of times with dieting, you get to your goal, you gain the weight right back, right?
Every time.
You use that motivator because you were so goal oriented, not process. You weren't, concerned with that. So that was a shift for me. And that's helped tremendously. Thinking about enjoying every day, not this day, a year or 6 months from now when I weigh this amount, or I can fit into this dress or something like that. Also, I wanted to circle back when you talked about redefining the treats, because this is a part of what's helped me as well. Does a treat have to be food? Right?
Oh, wait, let me process that. Let me.
Because that's what we were taught, right?
That's all I go to.
We reward ourselves with food, right? That's what I was taught. In my household, you had a treat. It was food. That was it. And so I started to think, what else? What other pleasures can I give myself besides food? What else can I indulge in that is good for me? What am I missing? What am I not doing for myself right now that would feel great? And that really started the wheels, turning.
I'm thinking as you're saying this, and
right
I can't come up with anything right now.
But again, this ties into the overnight, right? Because the good thing about something not happening overnight is that it can't be undone overnight. If you lose a lot of weight quickly, you can gain that back quickly, right? So you really don't want a change that happens that quickly. The gradual changes are the ones that you're most likely to stick with. They just become normalized. It's just your everyday life now, right? And they can't come undone as easily.
Love that.
So yeah, you'll have fun. That's a fun thought to play around with.
I love that. We have a comment that says, "And why are fries a treat?"
I mean, it's a good point. And typically we think to treat ourselves with something that actually doesn't make us feel good, right? Like maybe while we're eating it, like maybe while we're eating it, there's like that sensory experience that this feels great. But at the end, we kind of feel like, right? And so it's kind of ironic that we reward ourselves with something that is not so great. So
I want to
go
say
ahead.
really quickly that this is such an excellent point, that you take that time and you struggle, quote unquote struggle. It's a struggle to diet, right? Because you feel like you're so deprived. And then you say that first thing I'm going to do is have that slice of pizza.
Immediately.
Exactly.
Excellent point. And there are so many things that we do love that we can treat ourselves with. Just going outside and chilling in the sunshine to detract yourselves from that treat, right? That's a treat. This is an excellent point that you bring.
Excellent. And then someone says they're going to start pampering themselves, or they pamper themselves. Someone says earrings took the place of cookies for me. I love that idea. I love earrings.
Yes. Going
pedicure. But I've taken up running this year. And one of the things that you brought up, Natalie, and both have, but it really stuck with me. And I kind of watched this video a couple of times, but it talks about how to get a beach body in a week. Of course, and the nutrition is like, I mean, we can help with inflammation in a week, but you can't, you're not going to lose 30 pounds in a week, right? But he goes, huh?
It takes your body, people who are pre-diabetic know this. They have to go back to the doctor every 3 months to get their blood checked.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is that it takes your body 3 months to turn over and accept a new behavior. That's how they know if you had a cookie or not.
That's exactly the point I was going to make. That's exactly the point the nutritionist made. The nutritionist said it takes about 2 to 3 months for your body to basically believe you.
Yeah.
For real? Like, so even with me starting running in January, I see shifts about every 3 months about the physique of my body. It's, the weight can come up and down, but it, a small variation, but it takes time. I think for me, with Natalie saying there is no end goal, although I've been tracking, like trying to get to the end goal, but I think over the last couple months, I began to fall in love with actually running. I can feel the benefit of actually getting outside, being in nature, and not just like a chore or something I need to do, but something that really refreshes me and refuels me. And so I think that hearing that again, I think people need to hear that it takes 2 to 3 months, 3 months of consistent, lifestyle changes before you begin to really move that needle. And I think it's not just with, fitness and food, but I think that applies to like so many aspects of our lives. If we're trying to, move anything, it takes time. I don't think we're in a world where everything we want is instant gratification. We see something, we want it. We see that bathing suit someone had on Instagram. You want to get into it immediately. It takes time. Everything takes time.
And I like to say, people really give me the face and the side eye, but when I'm doing consults with people, I say 6 months, because the first 3 months you're learning.
That's so true.
You're learning about food, you're reading labels, and we put a lot on ourselves. And something that Stephanie said in the beginning was small steps.
Yeah.
Take one, and I just left us with that class. 1 or 2 things. Don't try to do everything because it's overwhelming. Do 1 or 2 things very well. And then it rolls over and it starts to have new habits start to occur. 1 or 2 things max. Yeah. And a lot of times people do 14-day fast. And then on day 15, they're back to their normal.
Binging back. I love that.
3 months, work on it for 6 months. Get it right. Make it ingrained into your normal day until it's just like me. I just make up my bed now. It's not a big
Yeah.
deal.
Yeah. I love that. And I love that analogy to making up the bed because for me, I love the feeling of getting into a made up bed. You know,
Right.
I feel like I'm in a hotel. It's
I can
relaxed,
tell.
it's soothing, you know, it's this
Right.
pampering thing. So I love that. And I love
Yeah.
the 3 months of learning. You know, I think that's, again, something that we can apply to so many facets of our lives. A lot of people want to, you know, start a business or start a new project or start something. They just want to get in and get it off the charts. And it's like, no, there's a lot of deep learning that needs to happen, and introspection and alignment. I know you have alignment in your name. I think it's something that definitely I innately believe in. So I think that's a lot of times too, we're just chasing what we see instead of like thinking about what the purpose is going to be ingrained in. I think if we're very clear about our why, that helps us on the tougher days, you know?
Yes. And you nail on the head with that. What is your why? You need that. And it has to be an emotional thing. It can't be, oh, because I want to get in a bathing suit. That's not emotional. You can let that go because you can always buy a bigger size bathing suit.
True.
Right? So what is the why? And just really quick, I had a woman that, you know, she couldn't figure out her why in the 6 weeks to wellness class. That's one of the first things we talk about is what are the goals, setting your goals. And it has to go back to the why. She's like, I just can't figure out the why. I don't know. But it took her a while. And she came back with, I want to be able to play with my grandkids.
I love that.
I want to sit, watch them. I want to be active with them. And it's something that tugged on her heartstrings, right? It's something that gives you an emotional attachment. And if you don't have that emotional attachment, it won't be important to you until, you know, there was an illness. So there was an emotional attachment. So had to make change. So when we have that emotional attachment, we're more prone to stay with it, and it means more to us. And especially the success on the other side feels so much greater and just more beautiful for us when we achieve what we're setting out to do.
I love that. I love that. And I think even with that, it's kind of those things where I know for me, I love to write it down so I can see it, you know, visually. You know, make a note or journal. I think there's some actualization that happens there and like connecting and finding that process. So I just want to throw that out as an idea. So I'm going to talk a little bit about food and moods. I think we talked about the health benefits, but one of the things I've experienced too is not just like, you know, Natalie kind of talk about feeling bad after you eat this, you know, something as a treat that's, you know, not good for you. And can you talk a little bit about how food can, you know, I know affect some people's mood, even though we're not all the same?
Yeah, so I mean, for me, definitely, there's the moral association with food that affects your mood. So we attach a lot of morality. I was good today. I ate such and such, you know, I was bad today.
Wow.
Right? And like, think about how powerful that is, that you're rating your character based on your food choices, right? So
I thought about that. Okay, you're right though.
Even with the diet choices, like, you know, there can be a sense of like moral superiority. Like, I'm a vegetarian. I'm not like these savage meat. I'm a vegan. You know, you see somebody going in on some wings and you're like, oh, you know, they shouldn't be eating that. You know, like, and you're on the other side of that as well, right? Like, I shouldn't be eating this. I'm too fat to eat this. You know, feeling ashamed. So it can definitely affect your mood if you attach, and we all learn to attach a lot of moral value to how we eat. But then there's also like just the physiological part, which probably Leslie could speak more to, that foods do affect the hormones, you know, going on in your body and in your brain. And I find this is so, you know what I'm talking about when you experience it for yourself. So if I go a day without my veggies, like I have to have my veggies now, because if I go a day without the veggies, not only do I feel like less energetic, but I also feel like less clear-headed. I don't know what
Absolutely.
but obviously vegetables pack lots of different vitamins, and all of these things serve our organs, including your brain, your kidneys, your liver. Like all this stuff is functioning right now, complements of the food and drinks like you put into your body, right? So like I'm sure it affects the brain, and that I just feel like kind of foggy, like less clear-headed when I eat nutritious food, like optimally nutritious food. I feel better. I think better, So that's been my personal experience with it, affecting my moods, like, from a more like psychological perspective and a more like biological,
I
perspective.
love that. And I had at the
Have you found that?
beginning of the pandemic, I had a lot of fog, and I wasn't eating well. I wasn't sleeping well. A lot of things happening. But I did have a lot of mental fog. And I think there were a couple of shifts where, definitely being more intentional about what I was eating and getting my foods and actually going to the grocery store, getting the things that I needed to survive. But then also, I
Mm-hmm.
realized I needed better vitamins. I needed, my body, I'm getting older. So my body needs different things. And so to kind of acknowledge that, but it has helped with my mental clarity where the things I would struggle with, I can kind of see more linear, clear-headed, as well. And Leslie, can you talk about some of the other biological, physiological?
Oh, sure. I mean, food and mood is so they're hand in hand because there's the gut brain connection. Our
Yeah,
guts,
that was a good thing.
tells us a lot, right? So there's a gut brain connection there. And we want to have different types of foods in our diet because a lot of our hormones, the creation is done in the large intestines. So some of those feel good hormones like serotonin and some of those, epinephrine, norepinephrine, they begin the creation in the large intestine. So a lot of the foods that we eat, we need a lot of prebiotic foods. And we talk a lot about probiotics, but we need the prebiotic foods because they help to feed the good gut microbiome. So we want to support the bugs, quote unquote, in our gut. So we hear a lot about probiotics, but we need the prebiotics, which are those fruits and vegetables, high fiber foods,
Can you
which
give
is
some examples where
sure,
we get
your high fiber foods like broccoli,
Okay.
all of the good cruciferous vegetables, cauliflower, those yummy Brussels sprouts, not fried. Um, all of that, a nice salad, good quality smoothie without a lot of fruit and carbohydrate, high carbs, in there, additives, sugar, and things like that. So, and keeping the sugar low, right? Keeping the additives and the sugars low in our foods are very helpful for the gut. So we want to create a good gut environment. So those microbes help support so much in our body,
Wow.
and we need to give them their food. So that's their food.
I
They
got it.
prebiotic foods,
Mm-hmm.
and that's
My first time hearing that term. I hadn't heard it before.
prebiotic foods. And then we want to come in after we've had a good, we focus so much on probiotics, trying to feed our gut, but we feed our gut, but we may be feeding it and we've got a lot of bad bacteria going on, which we talk about our mood, we get our stomach upset. I feel it in my stomach. I feel bloated. I feel uncomfortable. I'm stressed. So my stomach really lets me know that I'm uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So getting in those good prebiotics first, so you support the good gut health, then coming in afterwards with probiotics, either by capsule or if you eat yogurt, other fermented foods, helps to support the good bacteria. So if you don't have enough good bacteria and you're eating a lot of probiotics, might not be, might not be giving you what you need as you need it.
Right.
So that is very important to your mood. So I would say your gut, nutritionally and physiologically, is one of the first places to start when you're talking about food and mood.
I love that. I love that. Did you have anything you wanted to add to that, Natalie?
I mean, no, I think she said it perfectly.
I love it.
You know, it just, yeah, I mean, yeah.
You brought up cauliflower, and it has got the most major rebranding, and Brussels sprouts. You brought up both of them, and that has been
Oh, yeah.
rebranded in the last couple of years, right? They are in everything, everywhere. I
Right.
do love cauliflower as a substitute, and or you know, a vegetable meat substitute. But can we talk about where we are moving as a nation? What do you think in kale? Thank you so much. Jeff says kale as well. Can you talk about, do you feel like we are getting healthier as a nation? Do you feel like are we moving in the right direction as the Black community? Let's talk about that, because I think we need to talk about how information is being shared. Do you feel like we're moving in the right direction, or you feel like there's still a lot of information gaps?
Well, I'll go. I think it's a lot of information gaps. Unfortunately, I mean, I don't think diabetes is going down; it's going up.
Okay.
People don't understand the reference of carbohydrates in their body and how functionally our bodies metabolize and digest and all of those things. So we get, caught up in social media, bless its heart. I mean, Dr. Google, bless its heart, but it can give a lot of misinformation. And as we mentioned earlier, people are looking for the quick fix, and the quick fix, you got to give your body time. And the quick fix may be sending people in a direction where they want to go initially, and then they come out on the other side and they're like, dang, it didn't work. Or people are spending a lot of money and not getting the results that they want. So I think basic nutrition 101, and of course that's the lens I see things through, is so needed in our community.
Yes.
And it doesn't have to be hard. A lot of times social media and other things trying to make it seem like it should be hard. Or you got to drink this drink that looks like goop and you don't want to drink it. Or apple cider vinegar fixes everything. So there are good pieces to all of that, but it's not the whole piece. So
absolutely. I completely agree. What about you, Natalie? How do you feel we are moving as a culture, as a community, with nutrition? I do see some. I see people following trends. That I can say.
Yeah, the trends are really popular. I agree with Leslie that I think there is a significant gap. I think that the people who have caught on to it, like it's caught on like wildfire. So those of us who like heard, anything about how we can improve our health, or like, what can we do? And I think we're growing and getting healthier and making better choices. But then there's improvement there, definitely. But then there's a gap. And then there's always going to be a percentage of the population that is not motivated. Like they may hear the information and they still don't. And takes some acceptance, really. Like, I'm just going to be like candid. My family, when I first started exercising and buying food, fresh produce, like when my groceries switched from being packaged stuff to stuff that dies, that perishes, and I was so excited about it. And I talked to my mom and talked to my sister and talked to my aunt, and and the enthusiasm just, it wasn't there, right? So it wasn't there. And to this day, if they come over and I offer them something organic, they're like, deer with, caught in headlights. There's some folks just, they're not excited about it, and that's okay. You have to, I think, just respect it. It may not be that valuable to them, and that's so. I'm sure they have other things that they care about, and the way we're passionate or care about our health and food. So there's a certain amount of acceptance there. You have to just, apply, when folks don't want to get on board. But there is a information gap as well, I think. And I would love to see it in schools. I mean, I know, like in the school system, like they're so taxed already, and I know they're challenged already, but you do I know that they're changing like the vending machine, offering healthier choices there. But I would love to see more of like the educational piece. Like we had health class, I think when I was 14. And by
For 3 months
14, I
though.
mean,
It's one semester, it's 3 months, and you're on
exactly.
your own.
And then you're half asleep. You're half asleep. And by the way, kids don't buy their own
That
groceries,
part.
right? And so if you're educating the children but not the
Love that.
parents, there's a huge gap
Yep.
there. Children are vulnerable. They're subject to whatever circumstances their family members, their caregivers provide for them. And so it really begins at home with the family, the adults that are purchasing the food, right? When you go to the groceries, because if it's not in the house, you don't have to worry about monitoring it and not having this. If you just don't even bring it home, right? But if the adults are not conscious while they're shopping about like what in this cart are we going to get the most out of nutritionally, not just the dollar. How can we make this dollar stretch? But how can we make this support our bodies? Like that's a change that would have to happen, I think, through education, really, of the parents.
Absolutely.
And also how these choices will affect their children, into adulthood. If you struggle with, weight problems or eating disorders as a child, you're so much more likely to struggle with it as an adult. You really want to set your children up with a best case scenario, right? Like we have a lot of challenges as Black people already. Like anything we can do to fortify our children, to educate them, not just academically, but about their bodies and about their feelings, like financially, this is how we got started, right? Or how I started was starting today with that same principle, like, trying to get my finances healthy and start good habits there. So it's really a comprehensive kind of education I would like to see happen in schools with parents and children in the same room having these conversations, with someone who, like Leslie,
Yeah.
I love that the program exists and I love that it's so good to see a person of African descent, passionate, energetic, like preaching this gospel. Really, because this is something that really is a game changer, in your life. It has a practical application. It's not just make you feel good and then, you send you on your way. Like this, you can employ this in your day-to-day life, healthy eating, healthy food choices. And it makes all the difference in how you function that day and ultimately how you function in life.
I love that. And it's so important. I think a lot of times we talk about success, it's just money. And one of the things we really talked about yesterday was like hip hop and health. Like health is our greatest value, it's our greatest asset. If we don't have it, all the money in the world doesn't really matter, right? So that is a shift that we have to say, that not only do we want to set our children up, and I do believe our communities, our parents, they do want what's best for their children, right? And we want for our community. I think there has to be a shift. There's a lot of structural and systematic racism around food access and things that we know. But there's also a generation that, my grandparents, generation had a garden. We used to garden, we used to grow food in our backyards, and we've stopped, and I think there's a generation trying to pick that back up. And so I completely agree. We started to have done some health classes with parents and children around healthy eating. So a lot of after school programs are trying to pick up that slack. But I really feel like there is something to happen on a federal, a national, state level to make nutrition important. And that's something that I think, if people have more information about it, would advocate for it more. So there are a couple of questions that we'll get to before we wrap up, because it's such a great conversation. We can talk about food for forever, and we're already over, so I want to honor your time as much as possible. One of the comments said, the minute you decide to make dietary changes, you get called weird, and I always ask, well, what do you eat? So that's been my experience with my family in Texas, for sure. So they just stop. They just stop. I don't get no food. So it's just like, you figure it out. I don't know what you eat. You're on your own. And that's I come from one food desert. I still live in a food desert that's not as bad, but luckily the DC area, there is this emphasis on health. So if we don't have it necessarily in grocery stores, and there's farmers markets, and there's all this
Right.
access. There's in the grocery stores, even back home in Dallas, there was half an aisle that was for health foods. You go to your Giant and your other stores, they have at least 3-4 aisles of these are your healthy. This is the healthy food section. You know what I'm saying?
And think about that, Charlotte. Sorry to interrupt you, but think about that, right? Like, this is the food in this store that's healthy for you, as opposed to what?
I wonder
Like,
about
if
it.
there's 1 or 2 aisles for healthy food, what the hell else is the rest of the stuff you're selling us?
That is one of those things that kind of tweaks me a little bit, just in general, that this organic aisle gets labeled as the only place where there's healthy food. There's healthy food all over
That's
any
true.
grocery store, right?
Yeah.
It's all of the choices
Right.
that you make, and the fact that people feel that if it's not organic, it's not healthy. That's not the case.
Right.
It's a possibility that there's a person in the regular aisles that just couldn't afford to pay for the organic
That's true.
destination, right?
That's
Or
true.
to take all, but still takes all those steps, but opted out of saying, I'm organic. But yeah, there's healthy food all over the stores, and it's we know some of the food that does not meet our goals, right?
Absolutely.
And those foods that can help. So that's where you could get help to, and that's one of the things that we do, online grocery store tours. So you could talk about the food in the stores, and we go through each aisle and we talk about what's in the foods and where you can find those healthy food items.
So can you speak a little bit about this? Because I am seeing shifts for my local Giant, where a lot of the plant-based milks and things of that nature wasn't available just a year ago that are coming available. What power does the customer have in advocating for more healthier options in our stores, so we don't have to go all the way out to another 20 miles out, or go all the way into DC to get our foods in Prince George's County?
Yeah, I mean, you have to show that things are being purchased. I mean, everybody in the world is not running out to buy oat milk.
It's just me. It's just me.
I mean,
there's a few of us now, though. We got more than one section now.
Now oat milk is more readily available, probably at a price point that most people will agree to pay.
True.
Right?
Yeah.
So there's a whole bunch to that whole.
And the same you see with plant-based meats. I know they're becoming more competitive within their own market. So we're seeing more options available, and we're finally seeing the price come down on some of those items.
Exactly. Because people would say, it's always been available.
Yeah.
But people just didn't want to pay for it. So why is that $7?
Right.
Right. So, but now there is that shift. There are trends that are happening. Things are more readily available.
Yeah.
Just read your food labels and
go. True. Very true. Because everything that's vegan or plant-based doesn't necessarily mean that it's good for you.
That's true. Because there's organic and vegan cookies. I mean, you could be still buying something that not that cookies are the devil, but it may not necessarily be high nutrition just because it's organic.
Exactly. And lots of has a lot of oil in it, and so you just have to really see.
That's where some of the education comes in.
So we'll be hitting you up. Yeah. So a couple more questions. What is some of the most important information to look for in the nutrition labels and ingredients list? I know you talked a little bit earlier about the calories and the portion size. Is there anything else, I guess, as far as on the nutrition label that we should be looking at?
Well, the key to that, again, it goes back to your goals. What problem are you trying to solve? So are you hypertensive? So maybe you're looking at sodium. And are you pre-diabetic? You're looking at total carbs. Most people look at just sugar.
Yeah.
You want to look at the total carb, not the sugar. And you want to look for fiber. So you want fiber to be high and those sugars, total carbs to be lower on the lower end. 5% is considered low. 20% is considered high. So that's a quick of anything on a food label. Those percentage on the daily recommended. So when you 5% or less, that's considered low. 20% is considered high. So the thing that you always want high on any food label when appropriate is fiber. So you want that to have a 20%, or, you'd be like, yay, or 14%. You're like, yay, that's good for me. But we want to make sure we're paying attention to what problem we're trying to solve. If you're looking to solve your cholesterol issue, you want to be looking at, your carbs and your fat. High carbs really contribute to high cholesterol just as much as fat. So there are a couple of different ways to read a food label, and it depends on what problem you're trying to solve.
I love that. That's such useful, tangible takeaway information.
Mm-hmm.
And someone said garden. So there are a lot of people. I know Michelle, we worked with her. She's actually doing a meditation tomorrow. But she is also a community garden specialist in the area, who teaches people, communities how to garden in the county, Montgomery County specifically. And then we have the Pen on Planet Earth, Dope, who does a lot of gardening and food access programming and natural products as well. So that's some great resources. People are interested in want the information. So we have one question in the chat, and then what is the suggested daily calorie intake for women? I struggle with calories when eating more plant-based, because I'm always hungry when I'm eating plant-based. Listen.
Well, it's because it's all carbohydrate, right?
Yeah.
It's all carbs. So depending on your habits, that's keeping a food journal. And somehow you got to get that protein in, but getting protein in that will still be carbohydrate based, but you might have to eat more. And we carry some of the same, when we change our diet in that manner, we carry some of the same habits along with us that we had with the way we used to eat, and now we eat a new way. So you may have to eat smaller meals more often during the day. Everybody's different, right? If you're, you need to fuel your body.
Yeah.
Food is fuel. So you need to fuel your body. And, what I like to do with people is look at what they're eating through the course of the day. Look at their lifestyle. That's very important. Are you sedentary? Are you active? Do you have kids? Are you cooking multiple meals throughout the day? Because this person's a vegan, this person isn't, and you got a lot of things going on. So there's a lot that goes along with that kind of question. But on average, that 18, depending on your age, your weight, your activity level, that 1,500 to 2,000 to maybe even 2,500 calories, depending on your activity level and your height, age, and weight, can apply. But we need to do some serious calculations to answer that question. So you have to answer.
Love it.
Little meals through the day if you're just eating mostly carbohydrate-based meals.
I love that. And that's definitely what has shifted for me, and not needing to feel full. I think it was something I had to unlearn and understand, like, my portion is fine and my brain catches up, a few minutes later, like, oh, okay, this was enough. And we're good. And then I can always go back. I think the thing, too, is kind of what we talked about, this lack thing. It's where, you feel like you need to eat everything on your plate and you don't necessarily know where your next meal is coming from. And it's like, no, that's not necessarily the case. Right. There's still food. We can eat it later today. We can eat it tomorrow. We don't have to stuff 15 meals in one plate.
It takes 20 minutes for your body to recognize that you're full.
Yeah.
So slowing down, eating a lot slower. If you wait till you're really ravenous and hungry, that it won't turn those cues on and off appropriately. So giving yourself time to eat and taking your time with your food is important. Making sure you're having a fiber-filled day. I know a lot of vegans and vegans that don't eat vegetables.
What?
A lot of pasta. They eat a lot of, other food products that aren't, that are in those aisles. Right?
Yeah, you're right.
That are in those aisles. and they don't have vegetables really, truly. They're grain-based products, a lot of grain-based products. So it's important to look at in total what a person is eating.
I love that. I love that. So let's give one thing before we wrap up. One thing a person can do today to improve their nutrition intake. Mind, body, or soul. Food, whatever your takeaway is.
Well, one thing we haven't talked. We like to talk a lot about food.
Mm-hmm.
I love to talk about food. I am huge on hydration.
Okay, I've been drinking water the whole time.
The hydration is so important. If you find yourself snacking all the time, drink some water. Have some green tea without sugar in it. Do something to hydrate yourself, because we would perish very quickly without the appropriate hydration. But we can last a long time without food. So we talked a lot about food. We know the importance of food, but get some hydration going in and get some sunshine, that vitamin D that we're so deficient in.
Yeah.
Get some sunshine. Make sure your body is working for you and not always looking to food and supplements to get everything you need. Our bodies need that sunshine, so go out and get some.
Absolutely. We need the sun, we need the trees and the green spaces. You're so right. Can you talk a little bit, 2 more seconds about hydration? I think a lot of times think, well, I had some fruit juice, I had some, some seltzer water, I had some, something like that. Can you speak about the quality of hydration and what they look like?
A lot of times people say, oh, I have, water. The big question that I get a lot is, well, I bought the electrolyte water. Is that good for me? I'm like, sure. What water works for you and your budget, drink. Because everybody has a different budget, right? Not everybody can go out and buy the Tahitian water flowing from the waterfall, right? Everybody can't afford that. But if you can, great, drink it. But, if the tap in your own personal filter is what you got, drink it. But it really speaks to a lot of what our body needs, respiration, our gut health. A lot of people are, I'm constipated, get some more water and some movement in. Our mood, it helps to elevate our mood. Water is so important. The immune system, your mucous membranes, water is so important to every part of our body and our body's function that we really need to make sure that we are getting enough in. And I like to say, just to make it easy, half your body weight in ounces.
Love that. I love that. And that was echoed too last night as well. So thank you for emphasizing that again. Natalie, you have any one takeaway?
I probably have more than one. I think we have time. I will say this, after maintaining healthier habits and weight loss definitely is a step-by-step process. One thing I would suggest is, if you struggle with any kind of overeating or eating disorder, schedule a consultation with a nutritionist. They can do a metabolic workup for you, and they can plug in all those numbers that Leslie was talking. I had it done for myself, and they'll tell you, you breathe into the machine, and they measure, I think, the temperature of your breath, and they take your height and your weight and all these other things, your activities, and they tell you about how many calories you actually are burning in your day-to-day life. There's a range. And that's your fingerprint, metabolism, right? Because everybody's a little different. So if you're struggling with your eating, talk to a nutritionist. Leslie is obviously fabulous. I have my own. I'd be happy.
I'm a fan, so.
I have one that I went to. I'd be happy if you want to put in the notes, or somebody has a question. I'd be happy to refer them to mine too. She was great. Also, books that have helped me. There's a book called Health at Any Size by Linda Bacon. And it's excellent for teaching you how you can be in good health at your current size. So there's less of a fixation on weight and body, but how to be healthy in whatever that body is that you have right now. Health at Any Size by Linda Bacon. Also, there was a book I read that helped me a lot called Women, Food, and God by Janine Roth. very more the emotional eating, challenges. It helps you work through those. What else would I say? Eat things that are alive. Like I eat things that die, right? That's my, when I go to I want something that is currently alive, right? If it perishes, that means there's something living in it that can help you. Eat living things and concentrate on your food. Like enjoy, turn the TV off, put the phone down, smell your food, like look at it, like let eating a meal be a thing, not something you're squeezing into. Like give yourself that pleasure. I think that, we don't give ourselves permission to really like set out aside time to eat. It's a priority. It's important. And invest. But last thing, money. Even though we're all trying to save money, like you have to spend the money one way or the other. You can save the money buying like less expensive, maybe sometimes lower quality food now, but you're going to pay in co-pays, getting your diabetes medication, your high blood pressure medication, going to the doctor every 5 seconds. You're going to spend that money later in life. Or you could spend it on the front end being proactive and investing in healthy foods that sometimes do cost a little bit more, but it's worth it. It's well worth it. You won't regret the money you spend and the energy and time you spend taking care of yourself.
I love this. This has been so amazing, and I greatly appreciate you ladies and your time. We done went way over how much I thought, but I think it was totally well worth it, and definitely, the replay where people can access this information, I think will be really amazing. Leslie, can you tell people where they can find you and get more information about those resources? I know we talked about it a little bit, Giant.com at the beginning, but can you let us know how we can get all those resources from Giant?
Sure. You could go to giantfood.com. Fairly simple. Click on wellness and you'll see the team there, and you're able to access a nutrition, sign up for a class, download documentation. We have podcasts. So tons of resources available there. And if you wanted to reach out to me, I have a personal private practice. So you can reach me here, Leslie, properly aligned.
Love, love, love. Natalie, do you have any information, or you want us to send them your way in case we get any information?
I mean, I'm happy to. I have a wonderful counselor. I went to, seriously, I have a wonderful counselor. Her name is Indrani Mukherjee. I can give you her information. She's in Columbia, Maryland at 240-743-2220. Really help with the psychological portion of it, right? The needs that we're trying to meet with food, right? My nutritionist, they're Rebecca Bitzer Association, and they're also in Columbia, Maryland. Wonderful nutritionist there named Dana Maggie. She's really empathetic, patient, took her time. You want somebody that's going to listen to you before they try to solve your problem, right? Like assess what Leslie said, what are your goals? What's really going on here before we try to go in there like gangbusters and fix it. And I already, shared the books that have helped me. I highly recommend them. Audiobooks. I love audiobooks. All of the books I've listened to or that I've digested have been audiobooks. So.
I love it. And also your local libraries has a lot of books, audiobooks as well available. All you need is your library card that is free to you as a resident of whatever county or city that you live in. So take advantage of all the services that you are already paying for.
Yes.
And I think that'll be helpful. So we don't want money to be access, a barrier to getting good quality of books and audiobooks as well.
Audiobooks online.
Online.
Yes.
Well, ladies, thank you so much for your time, your energy, your information. This has been a great session. We will continue it. We have to have, more of it for sure. Tomorrow, we are doing 2 meditations, one at 7 a.m. Eastern Standard Time and one at 7 p.m. 7 a.m. is led by Michael Hatcher, who is very health conscious as well. He's been a lot helpful on my journey, as Natalie has. And then the evening session is led by Michelle Nelson, who is all things earth and garden related. So, and then Thursday we're doing Mind, Body, and Soul with Tariq, who is licensed marriage family therapist, and Jay Hall. And then on Friday, we're doing yoga. Again, Saturday, we're outside, free health screenings, free dental screenings, vision, the healthy food, healthy produce, fitness classes. There's a lot happens to DJ. We're going to dance, we're going to move, we're going to have fun. So that is at Oak Crest Community Center in Capitol Heights, Maryland. We're right across the DC line on Marlboro Pike. That is all we have for tonight. Thank you so much, and we'll see y'all tomorrow.
Thank you,
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Bye.
Bye.